for the country's parliament, known as the Federal National Council. Elections have also been announced in Saudi Arabia as well as in Qatar. So we are very much part of this wider Arab world.
Okay, so what about this move by Saudi Arabia to ban all public demonstrations? Is that likely to add, you think, just fuel to the fire? Is it perhaps the wrong move to make by the Saudi authorities?
Well, protests have always been shunned in Saudi, and they've never been allowed by law. So this is not a new development. This is just a reaffirmation or a confirmation of the ban itself. However, we've seen maybe several hundred, some say several thousand people go out in Qatif and the eastern provinces. I don't think that this ban is going to change their minds. I think that these individuals expect some reforms, and I hope that the government will probably try to assuage and give them some kind of reforms.
Is there any Gulf state, do you think, I'm thinking specifically here of Kuwait, that perhaps should be a model for the others?
Certainly Kuwait is decades ahead of any Gulf state. In fact, Kuwaiti women, for instance, several years ago won the right to vote and run in the parliament through democratic means. So we've seen them go and demonstrate, and they fought for their rights. So Kuwait is, I think, 2 to 3 decades ahead of any other Gulf state. The closest I see to it is Bahrain, which has a very active parliament. And then, of course, you have the other Gulf states come behind.
How do you think the Gulf politically will look in, say, I don't know, 2, 3, 5 years' time?
Certainly the Gulf is going to be much more democratic than it is today. Now, there is a choice of it being democratic within a system, or a choice of being democratic against the system. Now, I hope that the Gulf governments are going to embrace the demands of their citizens and maybe offer them some concessions and some rights. And certainly we've seen Egyptians and Tunisians go from 0 democracy to 100% of democracy in their countries, hopefully in the coming few months. So I don't expect that the Gulf citizens are going to accept the very, very small steps that their countries are willing to offer them.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate your insight. Sultan Saud Al-Qasimi there, Qasimi rather, who's a columnist for the National, joining us there live from Dubai. Let's take you back now to Yemen, where at least 40 pro-democracy protesters are reported to have been wounded in clashes with government loyalists. Let's get more now from AlJazeera's Hashim Al-Halbara, who joins us live from Sana'a. Hashim.
Well, there's been a gathering today in the province of Ab, 2 gatherings, one of the anti-government protesters and government loyalists. And the crowd, the government crowd, suddenly started moving towards the protesters, telling them that you have to leave the area. When they refused, they were attacked by with stones, batons, and also gunshots, warning gunshots fired in the air. And we now know that at least 47 people were injured in the clashes, some of them in a very critical condition. This comes as people, clerics, independent politicians here in Yemen have been telling the government that something has to be done to put an end to the clashes which are taking place in different places in Yemen, particularly Aden, Sana'a, and also the city of Hodeidah, where anti-government protesters are being harassed, attacked by government protesters using all sorts of weapons, daggers, AK-47, rifles, batons, and hurling stones at them.
So how does this play into the general situation currently in Yemen?
It's a situation of political deadlock with tension really running high across the whole country. The opposition is of the view that while they are in favor of taking to the streets, but they know that Ali Abdullah Saleh is under mounting pressure. Within the next coming day, if they can still manage to get some concessions from him about resigning within 7 months from now, before December 2011, they would love to go for that option, because, as you know, everybody here in Yemen now is suddenly tuning into TV channels watching events in Libya, and they know that this is something that has an impact on Yemen, because if the situation is degenerating into chaos and bloodshed in Libya, Yemen has the potential for more bloodshed because everybody is armed. So they are trying to see whether there is an exit strategy within the next coming days. Otherwise, they're just saying that they will overwhelmingly take to the streets and try to use force to impose change.
All right, Hashim, many thanks indeed. Al Jazeera's Hashim Al-Halbara there reporting live from Sana'a. As we told you a few moments ago, officials in the US are pretty worried at the moment about unrest across the Arab world, further destabilizing Yemen. The State Department's issued a warning against US citizens traveling to Yemen. For more on that, let's speak with John Terrett, who joins us now live from Washington, D.C. So what exactly has the State Department advised?
Hey, Adrian, do you remember at the tipping point in Egypt between the uprising and the revolution, the State Department did something very similar to what it's done in this past 12-hour news cycle. It issued a warning to Americans in the country to leave Egypt and not to travel there. And that's exactly what it has done as far as Yemen is concerned. The State Department issuing late Saturday night, Washington, D.C. time, a travel advisory to Americans who might be thinking of going to Yemen not to do so, and advising any US citizens who are still living in the country to consider leaving. Now, the State Department is not empowered to order any American out of the country, but what they can do is give a pretty big hint by saying that they are authorizing the withdrawal of all family members and what they call non-essential staff from the US Embassy in Sana'a. And so that will happen over the next couple of days as well. And the State Department cites for its reasoning the lack of infrastructure in the country. So that's difficulty getting money from cash point machines and banks, that sort of thing, geographical constraints, and also other security concerns. And I think that what the State Department is particularly concerned about, and Washington is particularly concerned about, is the idea of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula somehow gaining control in Yemen, and also the issue of piracy off the coastal waters of Yemen. This is also a big problem as well. So all of that might hamper any rescue operation that might be required further down the road, as we're starting to see now in Libya. So that's why the State Department has acted in the way that they have now. Adrian.
All right, John, many thanks indeed. John Terrett reporting live there from Washington, D.C. Let's get some weather news. Everton's with us once again. This time yesterday we were talking about a winter storm in the United States and in Canada. Cold weather, but at the tail end of that, of course, is warmer, wetter weather further south in the US, and that's causing trouble too.
Yeah, absolutely, Adrian. What's happening is we've got the warm, moist air being sucked up from the Gulf of Mexico, meeting up with that cold Arctic blast from the north. And it's when you get those huge temperature contrasts that you can see severe storms and maybe tornadoes spawned as well. And we've had a terrific amount of rainfall right up that eastern side of the US, and that's going to make its way through, but brighter skies will gradually make their way in behind. You can see from the satellite picture that huge bank of cloud out of the Gulf of Mexico, right up the Florida Panhandle, through the eastern seaboard, into that eastern side of Canada. And that's where we've seen, well, down across southern parts, that's where we've had the tornadoes, big amounts of snowfall up towards that northeastern corner into eastern parts of Canada. Slight